An injury could have ended his career. Instead, it lit a fire, to say the very least. G'day, I'm Shane Jacobson, and you're listening to How You're Travelling, a podcast from Healthy Heads. This time, I'm talking with Wex, a warehouse leader with lived experience, a big heart, and a message that mental fitness should be part of the job. Wex, welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, Shane. Thanks for having me, mate. Really appreciate the opportunity to come out and tell my story.
Yeah, well, mate, that's exactly why we've got you on the podcast, because you've got one heck of a story to tell, mate. I'll let you lead the way. Really, it's a terrible thing to have to say, but your journey, your inspirational journey, started with a terrible accident, didn't it? Not
Yeah,
by
mate.
accident, but by an accident, if you will.
Yeah. Look, to this day, when I talk about it, I call it my life-changing moment, which it did change my life at a young age. I was a couple of months out of my 21st birthday. I'd left school at grade 12, went down to Melbourne and have been living the great life down there as a young bloke. Um, and then got an opportunity to come back to Sydney where I grew up. I grew up in the Shire and my friends was a chance to reignite with them. And so they got me a job with them on a logistics company working from the airport. And so it was a great opportunity. It was an international company, and so I saw this as my future. Great pay, great conditions, and so 5 weeks into my 3 month probation, I had that life changing event, which was a declovement of my right thumb, while I was working. Um, and so that took me, I guess my life came crashing down. I didn't realize at that moment. I thought it was just an accident. Everything will be fine in a couple of weeks. I'll be back to work, and um, but that wasn't to be, unfortunately. My doctors. I went into an 8-hour microsurgery where they tried to attach the end of my thumb back in. Um, and as you may know, your thumb is the most important part of your hand. So
Yeah.
they were keen to get it back, and I was 20. I had my working career in front of me, so really keen to attach my thumb, which, because it was a tear and not a cut, they weren't able to. So that sort of began that whole process where it changed my life. So the doctor said, "Look, it's going to be 6 months. You're going to be out of work. They're going to have to go through rehabilitation." They gave me choices, which was a really weird thing, and I laugh about it now. But so I had to either, for the skin graft to take, I either had to get my thumb attached to the side of my hip, where they would basically near
Oh,
my groin.
to keep it alive, it's for blood flow,
Yes,
isn't it? Yeah, I've heard about
yeah,
this.
that was the first option, and that was the best option for them to do because it takes really well there. So they just cut a little flap, they stick your thumb in for 10 days, and then at the end they'll cut around it, and there's basically your skin graft. And I said, "Mate, look, I'm 20 years old. I'm going to be out of work. I'm not hanging around. How do I go for a shower? How do I go for a bath? How do I clean myself? How do I put my pants on when, you know, and walk around the Shire looking like Slim Shady?" Wasn't the best you could imagine. So I said, "What's option two?" So the option two was to basically put a pin through the side of my finger, cut a flap. That's the result anyway. Cut a flap.
Yeah, for
And
those listening, it's hard for them to see, but it's still, it looks like a thumb on camera, but
yeah.
I guess on closer inspection, it is, it is shorter than the other thumb. It's part of a thumb, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So it's up to the bone. So your bone thumb stops about here. So I went with a second option, and they said, "Look, we wouldn't allow this second option normally, but because you're young, the rehabilitation to get straighten your thumb back up is going to be intense." It's like, well, if it's only for 10 days, I'll surely can't be that bad. It was. It took 6 months to straighten my thumb up
My God.
after they unbolted it. Uh, it was the weirdest thing because it took that long just to straighten my thumb up, and that was their biggest concern, apart from the skin graft taking. And so that 6 months was really hell for me because I started to realize that, you know, didn't have a support. I was paying rent with my girlfriend, who is now my wife of 25 years. We were living, with a group of people that because we couldn't afford rent. And so that was the lifeline for us, my job that we had relocated to start. Um, in the interim, they didn't renew my contract, obviously, because I'd had a work injury.
Oh, so you did lose your job as a
I
result of
did,
the accident.
yes,
Oh
because
man.
I went to work cover as well. So I think that didn't help. And so the
Can
six
I
months,
ask one question I've not thought about until this moment? Has it impeded, did it at some point impede your chances of further employment? Is it something that came up that you've made a work cover claim?
yes, every
Really?
job that I went to and have gone to this day asked you that question.
Have you made a work cover claim?
Yeah, yeah,
God, that's fascinating. Isn't it just shouldn't be a barrier to entry, should it? That you've been injured at work, and when
absolutely
you
not.
have been injured at work, they go, "Oh, well, if you've been injured at work, we're not sure we want you to work here." I mean, I'm not saying
Correct.
that's what everyone's saying, but that must have been the inference, or at least the way it felt to you. Wex, I hate to make you relive it, but I've got to ask: how did the accident happen? What occurred for you to lose part of your thumb?
Mate, I was loading a brand new truck. So these trucks come in and we load pans. And pans are these things that they slide in and out of the side of the aeroplanes.
Mm-hmm.
So they load it outside and then they just slide the cargo in. So this was sitting on the back of a truck and it was a brand new truck, brand new gates. And unfortunately, I found out as a result of my injury, the gates had not been finished off. So they still had these prongs, which were, the parts of the gates, like a fencing, like little square garden
Okay.
fencing.
Yep.
So they were still protruding from the top edge. So me at 20, instead of walking towards the back of the truck and getting off like normal people did, I finished the loading. I just climbed up, literally climbed up the side of the gates,
Yeah.
went over the gates and looked at my landing, prepared my landing, and just, pushed off to jump off the truck. Anyway, I had a thumb ring on, and the
Oh
thumb
no.
ring got caught on one of those protruding
Oh.
little
Oh my
stakes.
God.
And
Now I
it's,
regret asking, Wex, because
oh,
that's
I
terrible.
still send shivers.
So is this the only downside to being married?
And I wasn't even married back then, I was just
Oh, it
wearing,
was just a bit of jewelry. It wasn't even a wedding
wearing
ring.
bling for the sake of wearing bling, as you do.
Copy
You know,
that. But mate,
trying to tell people you earn more than what you actually do.
isn't that incredible though? That for the sake of it, I'm going to say it was you being almost an enthusiastic employee, like getting the job done. You know what I mean? As a young man, I mean. And especially at 21, we all remember what 21, felt like. Dare I say it, a little bit invincible, and definitely all of us were pretty athletic. So it wasn't like you were trying to do anything wrong or show off or in any way be flamboyant. You were actually just decided, well, I'll just jump down off this thing here, and then within I imagine seconds, as you said, that was a turning point for your life. Your life changed forever.
Absolutely. Did not think that anything was going to happen to me. I was fit, I was agile. It did not even occur to me the possibility of something going pear-shaped
Yeah.
due to those actions.
So, mate,
Not at all.
the accident happens, and as you've said, it's the 6 months after that I want to focus on for a little moment, if I can, because I imagine people listening are going, "What a terrible accident!" But then there's that 6 month journey, and mate, some people have obviously never thought about what that journey would be like. So I'd love to hear your lived experience, if you will. So there's the injury to get over and the obvious loss of part of one of your hands. And as you've said, thumbs are so important. I mean, that they talk about us as having opposable thumbs. That's quite a part of our machination of our robotics, if you will, that make us operate as a human. So all of a sudden you've gone, okay, that's going to change forever. But you can't work. And so the rehabilitation is to get that hand working again. But I guess I just want to understand what it's like, because all of a sudden you've lost your job in the same moment you've lost half a thumb, and then you've obviously lost those X amount of hours a day with your workmates. You've been taken away from workmates, and then you've lost that connection with people. Is that what started, dare I say it, the downward spiral in your mental health? Is it all of those losses? Is that what you suffered for the 6 months?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're spot on there, Shane. Without knowing what the impact was going to be, I went in there with, yep, I'm doing rehab, everything's good. Wasn't until I started to go into work cover and they were paying me. So Centrelink, because I was a work cover case, they were paying me $230, I think it was a fortnight. And so that started to impact my life and my girlfriend's life at that time. Couldn't pay rent, struggling to get food, living on one income. And it just started to, like you said, I didn't see my mates. I couldn't go back to work. I was specifically told by the lawyer not to do any work because you will ruin your final payout. Well, I was back at work within 2 weeks because I just could not survive with what I was getting at that time, or knowing that I was going to get that. So it probably took about 2 months to get my first payment because of the toing and froing of the process in getting work cover.
And Wes, can I assume at that point in your life you were probably living week to week as it was?
Absolutely. Day to day. It was
Right.
day to day. And, so I did go back to work, and which, after it was all said and done, I'm glad that I did because it kept me motivated, put me into a work environment with my teams. I was working with a couple of mates, just forklifting in a warehouse. But it gave me that drive to go, look, I can't sit on the sideline and watch this just go ahead, which then it did impede because when I did go for that final, 4 years later, when there was final payout, they came with photos of me on the forklift. 2 weeks, dated 2.5 weeks after my incident. It's like he was okay. He was no worries. It didn't impede him at all. So, which I would never change anything. I had to work. I had to get back. I was fine. I felt physically fine. Still had a bandage around my hand, but I was okay. But it was the lack of, I guess, support. I kind of expected more from my employee.
From your employer?
Yeah, some level of support. They did not reach out till the final day of payment, really, which was 4 years when I saw their representation in court, when I went through that process. So I felt let down. I felt like I was giving my 110% for that 5 weeks. I really wanted to be with your organisation, and I look back at it now and what I do in my safety history. Training the young blokes coming in, the onboarding process is such an important part of of a worker's coming into a company or coming into a new job. We pay a lot of I guess we put a lot of effort into making them understand what the risks are in the workplace and how we control it, and the processes that we do, to be able to work and go home safe at the end of every shift. And I felt like I didn't get that. I felt like I was really left on my own. No one checked up on me. And when I spoke to the team before, there was nothing about mental health back then. The stresses and the I guess the anxiousness. I didn't even know what that was till probably in the last 10 years, to be honest. It wasn't spoken about. It was just me. Look, I'm just going through the stresses of not earning money. I was going through the stresses of having an injury. It wasn't mental health to me. But in hindsight, I went through depression. I went through anxiety. Am I going to be able to do normal job that I wanted to do? I wanted to be in logistics. I wanted to be in a management role. I wanted to do this and I wanted to do that. And this injury now has impeded that because I can't, I potentially can't get back to where I was before. So this is all happening in the first 6 months post injury.
So mental health for some people, I think they talk about it's obviously depression or it can be anxieties of different kinds. The solution that Arthur, our expert, gave us was understanding what mindfulness is, which is separate from those. And he explained it better than anyone else. Have a listen to this.
First and foremost, be aware.
Be aware.
Take the time to connect with your emotions, thoughts and feelings. We often think about mental health on a bit of a continuum. You know, one end, let's say that's 10, you've blown a head gasket, you've fallen apart. So what do I need to do to plan better so I don't run out of petrol, or how do I conserve energy? And it equally applies from a mental health standpoint. You don't want to be at the red when you're blown a head gasket or you've run out of petrol, because that's somewhat too late. Then you're in crisis mode, you're trying to find petrol, you're trying to find someone to help you. So how do we get better? And I think being a male-dominated environment, we're often not as good at recognising those earlier cues. So how do we just tune into that a bit more? And that is that self-awareness. I use simple things like, scale of 1 to 10. A number. I always say, my optimum is maybe a 6. That's where I feel I'm good. So how do I try and maintain staying at a 6? If I get to a 6 or 7, what can I do to get back to a 6? That could be I just need to take a break, a breather, whatever it might be. Compared to, I get to 7, I've got more left in me, I can go to 8, 9 and 10. Rather than keep going up, how do I keep pulling myself back down?
And you're 21, you're a young man, I imagine, with at that point, not a lot of life experience, a fair bit, but not as much as a man of our age now. I'm going to assume we're roughly near the same age. So that you touched on a little there, Wex. It has sent you off on in a new direction, I would say, because now you're doing, as you just said, you're now talking to kids and giving them the messages you felt you didn't get at the time that you had your accident, or perhaps even before the accident. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about what you do now in communicating to young employees about the workplace and workplace safety in particular?
Yeah, mate. I guess that was a catalyst for me to, I promised myself that, I don't want any, newcomer, especially the young guys and girls coming into the workforce, to go through what I went through, because it wasn't nice for anyone to go through. The lack of training, the lack of mentoring as you come into the workforce. I think there was a level of assumption there that, you've got the job, you should be right, mate, type scenario. So I've gone in, I went into a health and safety role. I did my Cert 4 and did some really big projects across Australia, which has enabled me to fulfill that, sitting down and talking to the newcomers, your apprentices especially. And not to say that the older guys don't, the most experienced, some of them have the biggest injuries at work. But I really wanted to target those newcomers into the workplace, the ones that are eager to impress, the ones that have minimum experience on risk assessments and how to control those, not just emotions, but control those choices that you make in the workplace. And I think, I've learned along the way as well how to be a better communicator with the young workforce, because to me they are still the most at risk, portion of our workforce, still to this day. And even though the level of training, some may come in with 2 or 3 years experience, they all go through a facet in their time at work that they're different. Their risk levels are different, which I've seen, for the 22 years that I've been doing it. I can see the approach that you have to take with the different age groups.
You have a different language you use around younger people, don't you? You have to kind of change the way you talk. Can you tell us a bit about that? As a parent of young children, I get we can't communicate the same with all age groups, can we? We've got to kind of shift our tone or shift the way we describe things, I guess.
Yeah, look, my method has always been to share my story first, and to get the confidence in them by knowing a little bit about myself before I ask about them, and for them to share their story. I gain confidence in about being open and talking the language that they talk. And if we're throwing F-bombs around at Smoko, so be it. There's no rule about how I communicate with the different age groups. The young ones I find these days are more accepting, and they're more free to tell you how they feel. Believe it or not, which is, I don't know what happened in the last 10 years, but I find it harder to try to gain the trust and the confidence of older workers than I do with the young.
So you find the young kids, the younger kind of employees, are more open to communication with you and have a back and forth and are willing
Absolutely.
to. But you touched on it before. I wonder if it is that thing that you said you've gained their trust. I guess because you start from, hey, I just want to make sure you kids, I assume pretty quickly they get the point that you truly don't want them to go through what you've been through. And that by the very nature of the fact that you're going, I'm here to talk about safety and let's just start with this. And I imagine you hold your hand up and show them half a severed thumb and go, I'm a lived example of when it went wrong. All so quickly, I don't want this to happen to you. I guess it comes, I imagine it would, do you think that they feel it comes from a place of compassion and passion and that you genuinely want them not to go through what you went through?
Absolutely. And I call him Tom, by the way. So
Oh, Tom
Tom
Thumb, of course.
Tom is at the forefront of all my conversations, mate. He's well known throughout my working career. And look, believe it or not, it is good to have a scar. You're not a fake if you can show a physical impairment or a physical sign that you've been through it. So it does help, and it's about, look. We can, we can talk all day. What I'm here to tell you is that, have you ever thought about this? And have you ever thought about that? Have you thought about the influences that you have on your workmates in the actions that you do? So you bring it into I've always been a team player, and I love my team. Um, so, focus on individual at the start, but think about the wider community that you're working within. And most of them you'll get a buy-in because they're doing it for a team and not for individually. Um, and I found that to be very successful up to this day. It's about how would Jono feel if we were coming tomorrow to visit you in hospital because we've had, you weren't wearing gloves and you were cutting towards yourself in a line of fire, and you've either severed your fingers or, because you're rushing to do a job that no one's asking you to rush for. What doesn't happen today will happen tomorrow. So, take your time. Stop the job if it's unsafe, and you'll get 110%. And so I think part of it is talking about it, but the second part of it, and I think the most important part, is backing that up with actions. And so I'll go, it's like, let's stop the job, and we're going to have a half an hour conversation. And whatever time restrictions that we have with the customer or the client, it doesn't matter. And so you're showing them that it is okay to stop the job, and it's not just a bit of, it's the common language that we use and management use to, you have the right to stop the job. We're actually going to do it. And you start to see that confidence built within themselves when someone is doing it first, allows them to get a great understanding of, okay, it's cool. We just had a 45-minute chat, and no one's getting up us for not doing our job for 45 minutes. Unreal. And so it's just that commonality that you find. I also look for those influencers in the group.
Oh, yeah.
And they're the ones that are, they're the ones that talk up at pre-start, in the back, sitting in the very corner, always got the best jokes in the place. And they're the ones that I target, because they do influence the group, whether negativity or positive, they are influencers. And you can turn a whole group of young people by targeting that influencer and getting him on board or getting her on board. Um, So that's been successful for me.
What a great way of looking at it. I hadn't thought about that. Even for our truckies out there listening, one thing that some truckies have told me is one thing they want to see come back into their workplace is actually the camaraderie over UHF radio. Normally they're one thing we've found out, and again, I've spoken to a few truckies, and they're not kind of waving to each other as much as they used to back in the day. And two-way radio chat is not as kind of jovial or fun as or again, in the line of camaraderie. I think there's people complaining about traffic conditions. What a great idea for them to steal an idea from you, and I bet you wouldn't mind them stealing it, is to look to the people who will probably have the loudest voice, and if it's a good one, lean on it, and if it's a bad one, try and alter it by saying to them, hey, let's keep that negativity out of the workplace, and for your own benefit and for the benefit of everyone around you. It's such a great note. And for other employers that might be listening, to go, look, spot those louder people in the corner, and if they are a bit more amusing and lighthearted and they get people's attention, get them on board, get them in early to lead the group.
And look, my history, it's the loud ones, it's the smart asses that sit in the back. They're the first ones to go. And I
are we talking? Hang on, are we talking about me now, Wex, or are we still back onto you?
Not at all. Look,
I just want to know.
You make good coin from that, Shane. You do. You stay where you are, mate. But
it's going all right.
It's generally the ones that you get rid of at the end of the project. They're the first to go. I think they have such power within the workforce and within their groups that you can just harness that power and turn it into something really positive. They should be the ones that are our mental health first aiders, that I see. They're the ones that should be, our first aiders or our leads out there. And a lot would disagree with me, and I think it's the way that we approach it. They're the ones that get seen. So why not use that, that power that they have? They didn't come to work to be a smart ass. It's just nature. It's natural for them. They want to be seen. They want to be heard. Let's get them in there and turn it into a positive and, a mentoring type. They're the ones that are great trainers.
There you go.
Within our organisations. Because people listen to them. They've just got this natural skill that people listen to.
Yeah, because they have a voice at volume, yeah?
Yeah. And look, they get their audience because of what they're saying. And it's generally against, what management want them to say. But yeah, I think if we can change that around, and I've seen it happen. I've seen it work many a times before where, mate, some of them end up to be great safety people because they have that, they have that innate ability to make people listen when they're at the front doing a toolbox or, talking about a reading out a safety alert or a bulletin. People stop, and that's what you want. They also know which ones are the next influencers because they're one themselves, right? So
yeah.
I think they're the ones that can assist us in the workplace to get that messaging across. Make the right choices. And it's okay to make the wrong choices. It's just the consequences could be,
could be dire.
Dire, yeah. Yep.
So, mate, we've got you. There's the old adage, prevention is better than cure, and we know it is definitely. And as we know, there's the expression, safety is no accident. Was the old sort of joke / again headline, and that's one of the reasons we definitely wanted to get you on the show is because everything we're focused on, we're trying to put the spotlight on mental health and hopefully come up with a first aid kit for some of our wonderful listeners that may need the first aid kit. But also, what we love about having you on is that because prevention is better than cure, you went through a circumstance where you were injured, and as a result, you had 6 months of a mental health journey that got slowly worse, and then different contributing factors. So, we'd be mad not to lean on you for more advice. And again, we love the idea if you can stop some of our men and women getting injured, then they don't have to go down that road. And that is, we've done it. We've prevented something rather than tried to cure it. One of the things that you touched on at one point, I've heard you talk about, and it's a thing I hadn't really thought about is that when you're talking to young people coming in, you're trying to teach them the things like, if you don't know, ask, because that lack of training that you experienced as a young man at 21, that was something that was in short supply for you. You felt so training people, if you don't know, ask, and lean, find a mentor, lean on the people above you, and teaching people older than them to teach the younger kids. But there's two parts of this. Tell me if I've got this right or wrong. There is teaching young kids to, if you don't know, ask, and learn what you don't know to keep themselves safe. And then the other end where people get injured is complacency, too much knowledge, too much experience. Is that fair to say for our people listening? It's either the new ones coming in are at risk. Everyone can be at risk in a dangerous workplace, but the complacency for some of our truckies who've been on the road, we've been talking to truckies who've been doing it for nearly 40 years. There's complacency as well, isn't there?
Absolutely. And and I think it's the mindset that I have been doing it for that long. It hasn't happened to me yet. It's not going to happen to me. Type of scenario, and look, when we're looking at the I guess the mental health side of it, I don't have the magic solutions. I know what works for me is that, or what I would like to see improved from my experience, is that we need to. I'd like it to be normalized. I'd like mental health to be part of everyday conversation. I, in my safety profession, and I've been doing it for the last 20 odd years, when you have a safety alert, it's about an injury or it's about damage to plant and equipment. It's about those physical incidents that we have. Um, and if we have a safety share, it's about an event. It's about someone getting a crushed finger, or it's about a forklift hitting a stationary object. Never in my career have I heard a safety share about mental health. And I think that the more we talk about it, we expect our workers, especially our younger workers, to be upfront and to come and to acknowledge that there's a risk there, or to say, listen, I don't feel comfortable. That's our expectation. That's been my expectation for the last 10 years. If you don't feel right, come and talk to us. However, to me, as I reflect, it's a one-way traffic that we're asking them to go down, and we want them to come to us, but we're not doing as much as we can to go back and normalize a conversation every day. It's okay to feel anxious today. It's okay to have stresses in your life. What we're here to do is see that how we can help you with those, and just have those constant conversation. We're going to have a safety share today, and it's about depression. And let's talk about some key signs that we can look for in our workforce. Unfortunately, there's that area that we can be better at, and I know we're getting really, really good in the way that we communicate the services that are out there, and we've got EAP programs for nearly every place that I work with. We have Are You OK Day. We have these intermittent times of the year that we celebrate or we acknowledge mental health. I would like, Nirvana for me is that Are You OK Day is every day,
Yeah,
and
agreed.
mental health day is every day. Men's health is every day, women's health is every day, and yes, we acknowledge it on a big scale every once, or for a week, a year. But I think it should be part of every conversation. When you go home, you talk about it with your kids and your family. When you're at home, let's just normalize it, because if we want people to, young workers to come to work and start talking about it, they should have been listening to it at home. They should have been listening to it at school. They should be saying that it's okay to feel like this. And these are some of the areas that we can help with. These are some of the people that can help you with that. And it's we all know it's free and it's confidential, but getting them to go there, it's a lot harder. I think that's our challenge. We put these programs into place. I think we need to program ourselves to having these conversations. Yeah, and then that to me is one area that we can improve on as a whole, as community, society, workplaces. Just normalize it a bit more, I think.
Yeah, because it's that expression that it's not okay. It's okay day. It's not just a day. It's the way. And Are You OK Day have done a great job of actually putting it out there. And I think that the truth is they kind of use that as one day to get attention to it. I agree with you, mate. I think slowly people are going, oh, right, it's not just about that day. It is about it's the way, and to get people to understand that it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to say out loud, I'm not okay, because the world now is more accepting of that. You won't be judged. But yeah, I'm with you, mate. I'd love to see it more normalised and more of a common occurrence, which is exactly what this podcast is about. And in fact, it's exactly why, it's been called Healthy Heads. We're trying to make sure people have a way to get to a healthy mind and a healthy state of mind. So, I'd love to think that's why we're doing this too. And that's what, obviously, we'd love to think that's why you said yes in so quickly to coming on the show. A safety share for those that don't have these, because some of our listeners won't know what a safety share is. Can you explain what a safety share is? Because it's something they might be able to include into their workplace or into their own lives.
Yeah, so a safety share is generally, you start off a meeting, or you start off your toolbox talk at the start of your shift, where you've got your group there, and you ask someone to share, whether it's their experience, whether it's someone else's experience, and you want it to be tailored around who that audience is. We're not talking about insurance fraud for a bunch of truck drivers,
Yes,
or
that's right.
cyber security, with the guys driving heavy vehicles around. So, but I guarantee that each person in that room or part of the audience has a story that could influence. If you only get one out of that crowd, it's one that they never had. So that safety share is about an honest reflection and sharing of a story, and it's a true story. Most of the time, it's a true story, and when you hear someone go up and their voice start to quiver, it hits you, and and it just that vibration goes through the whole room. Not only in a negative way, but in a positive way, because this person being able to point now in their life that they can reflect on what had happened to them or to someone that they know and love potentially. So yeah, that's what a safety share is. It's generally something that we can learn from, something that we can avoid happening to us and to others, and also know that it happens. It's not just a story that you read in the paper or saw on YouTube. This is someone that's sitting up there. This is one of my colleagues, and it's happened to them.
It's funny for truckies. There's one of the safety shares they did without them even knowing it was a safety share. Is they used to always get on the two-way, get on the radios, and let each other know of a danger ahead or a traffic jam or around the corner. It's funny they did safety shares before it was called a safety share. And the thing that must be interesting for you is that everyone, when you get a new group of young kids that you're training, you start with a safety share with your story of your accident. I mean, that's exactly how you start, isn't it? You start
Absolutely.
every one of those conversations with your very own safety share. Mate, One of the things I know you talk about is a post-smoko check-in. Can you talk us through, because it's funny, we all know that smoko is where people thought that people made connections and had those chats, but I'd love to hear your thoughts around the post-smoko check-in.
Yeah, so it was based on, we did some data on our injuries and incidents that were happening, and it was mainly incidents. And what we found out was that our team started at 6. They had a pre-start at 6. They go out. They had smoko at 10, and then we started to see that the data that we ran, it showed a really big spike in injury time between basically 11 and 1. And so trying to analyze the data that was in front of us, and started to talk to the teams themselves. What are some of the challenges that happen around this time? Change of work conditions, and conditions mean that we've got an urgent delivery that we've got to do. We didn't know about it at the start of the day. but it's because it's urgent, we've got to get it out now. So your planning for the day, which started at 6, has now been affected by this urgent delivery or this urgent pick that has to be picked. And it's, it was 6 pallets. Now we want 24 pallets, unfortunately. The truck has deviated and missed the first drop. It's going to come back. We need to unload it and then reload it with the 12 pallets. So your planning goes out. And what we found was that this created, I guess that unforeseen or unplanned stresses within our workers. And we're not just talking about one or two. When there's a change, there's a whole chain of people that are involved in making that change happen. And so this is where we thought, okay, so it's about not the equipment that we've got, not the training that they've received, not the conditions that they work in, but it was the change and the stresses that we've introduced into their working day that is potentially causing this. And that was the feedback that we were getting. It's like, well, I had it all planned out. I had 6 pallets there. Next minute, I've got to go and pick another 12 pallets because that wasn't enough, and then that's just going to mess me up now. Then I planned my smoko for this time and they planned theirs for that time. It throws a whole, you've just thrown the whole plan out the window. So what we did was we introduced so after the 10 o'clock smoko, they came back at about 11:30, 12, we had another stop and it was a reset. We called it a reset. And what it was to get the group in and say, okay, so what have the changes been since this morning? Yep, and they talked about it. And so have we got enough people to do that? Well, no, because old mate had to go and do an urgent delivery, so we're one driver down, and then that means that we're one forklift now because that one's there, and then we can't pick it. And okay, so it's a reset, and then we started to analyze what are the most important things that we need to do today, and so what happened was it took it back to the planners, and the planners would say, okay, so from now on, this doesn't get done. If it's an urgent delivery, we need to have 24 hours notice for this kind of stuff because it is causing a lot of stress. And then we have to go up to the client and say, these are the new processes that we've come up with to control or try to control the amount of potential events that we are causing with our people working on the ground. And so that reset, it was also a great opportunity for the group to come together to share their stresses. And what we found was that you could have your own stresses and you're going through your own way of dealing with it. We found that getting into a group, there was a lot of commonality that we were going through as individuals that you didn't have to. You were trying to think for me, how if I do this, it's going to impact that, and that's going to, and so we came together and sharing that, and it was only for 15 minutes. But the amount of information and the amount of, I guess, changes that we were able to make as a group, it ultimately reduced our incident rates, literally by 80%.
80%?
Because we were able to have people have a voice and say, enough's enough. We talk about stop work. They were able to perform that stop work authority and not think that they're going to be written up. Don't think that they're going to let the team down, because it was a team agreement that this is the way we were going to do it. It wasn't an individual thing. It was a team thing. And they all agreed that this is the way that we're going to do forward. And we moved on. And so what that also created was that freedom to speak out.
Yeah.
You may have not have the confidence to speak out at pre-start because the group was bigger. But when you're in the forklift operators, they talk about it. They've got ways to do things. They've got their own language. Then you've got the drivers. They've got their own method of communication. It started to bring that unity back to the cluster of teams that you had on site, and you found some commonality that you were going through that you didn't have to do on your own, because it's not up to you to solve all the problems, that we've created as a organization, or, as the bosses of the site. So, and it's stems down and stems back up as well. So, we have to find ways of letting the client know that this is what is happening, and it's for the detriment of keeping a safe work environment for our workers. So yeah, really, really successful. That just that time, tools down. Let's just have a reset and think about the challenges that we've just been thrown since we started pre-start. Because you know, every project I've been involved in, every job that I've done, you start and you go till you knock off. The only time you stop to really have a break is your smoko and your lunch. Other than that, and within that time, the plans change. They could change 20, 30 times.
Mm.
Puts the onus back on individuals to manage that stresses, which, unintentional, of course, and no one's doing that on purpose, essentially not management or company, but it does happen.
Yeah, but it happens
Yep.
nonetheless, kind of thing, doesn't it?
Yep.
And
So that really worked for
it's
us.
it's amazing you said that it reduced the accidents by 80%. And I know just before that you were saying that it was a 15. Sure, you had to kind of down tools when situations change. There was a plan, and at the start of the day, that plan would have worked if that day went to plan. Something changes, the plan's out the window, and you're saying if things start to get a bit untidy, if you will, or because the plan has changed, people aren't on the same page or on the same plan, that to take that 15 minutes. I mean, the message, I guess, is clearly to the employers to take that 15 minutes just to make sure everyone is going to work safe and comes up with a new plan. That as much as that's 15 minutes that someone might look at the stopwatch and go, there's 15 minutes that the workers were unproductive. If you've reduced accidents by 80%, you can only assume, I know we don't have a crystal ball, but you can only assume that it would have saved so much trouble, so much time, let alone someone being injured or potential loss of life or limb, as you know too well. But not only that if someone does get injured, the work site does get shut down. And if that person can't come into work, you've got to train someone else. And that's going to mean someone else has to be a mentor for that person. That costs time. I mean, 15 minutes. Talk about risk versus reward. That 15 minutes is gold, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think the truckies have been doing it, transport, stop, revive, survive, right?
Yeah,
It only
100%.
takes that 15 minutes.
To have a rest,
just
to make sure you're back
reset.
on the road safe.
Yep.
And you were saying from the top down before, talking about management. I know you've said, you and off the back of what we've been talking about, which is, if they can take those little breaks to make sure the plan is in order for everyone to be safe. You do talk about, obviously wanting bosses or employers to not just talk the talk but walk the walk. That's something I know you're quite vocal about. Do you want to, for our last few moments here, do you want to talk about any employees that might be listening with why you talk about them walking the walk and the benefit that would have on not only employees but the workplace in general?
Oh, look, I think as a normal, worker on the ground level, you see the influences that your bosses and your managers have, the respect that they have for them, and I think they, you know, in part, holistically, they are our influencers. When they talk, people listen, right? So it's okay to say it in a general sense, but I think that again, if we normalize it, if the bosses are talking about it, then for me on the ground, it's okay for me to talk about it. If our management open a session of a meeting and say we're talking about mental health today, that is going to grab the attention of everyone in the room. Your leaders leading, and that's what I mean about we need to, yes, normalize it, but we need to just get it into our normal conversation where it's up the top or where it's on the ground, because they are our influencers. Most of them are in our management teams, and so people listen to them. So I would like to see that, and I think we all need to do better. Um, you know, for for downstream, for the guys and the girls on the ground. We can do a lot better from senior management to top management in just the way that we have those conversations. We're having conversations all the time. Let's just start to steer towards, mental health. How are you feeling today? How are the kids? You got brand new baby. Get in the conversation, a real life conversation, and understand who the workers are and what they're going through at home that could potentially be influencing the way that they behave at work. Because there's always something, to me. I believe there's always a trigger point, whether girlfriend relationship, wife, boyfriend. You may have just, you know, done your ass at the pokies and put your whole week's wage through there because you're trying to make up money so you can pay your rego. There's always something um, that someone is causing them not to feel 100%. If we can touch on those little things, and really, we don't have a magic ball, I suppose, but I think the simple conversation goes a long way.
Yeah.
And the simple conversations I have with people that have come up to me, and I think, wow, that was unreal. I'm used to giving it out, but it's great when you receive it as well. So yeah, they do great things, and I know there's a lot of stresses up on top. But if we normalise it and bring it into our normal everyday conversation, I think it can only help, right?
Yeah, cannot
we
hurt.
don't do it
Can't
yet.
hurt.
Can't hurt just to throw it in there when we're talking to our people.
Well, mate, we've got a little thing we do at the end of each podcast where we ask our guests, our contributors, if you will, just a few questions, and it doesn't have to be about the workplace. It can just be about the world in general. It's just a bit of lighthearted fun. And I'm going to start off with, mate, what lets the air out of your tyres, so to speak? What drives you mad?
Look, I'm a bit of a clean freak, Shane.
I love it already.
Well, as the missus would say, you're pretty anal, and I've got twin boys, I've got two girls, and I've always worked away. Like I did probably 18 years of FIFO work. So I think what drove me mad, because I was always in this donga, in this little space that I can keep clean. I can run it how I run it, and then I'll lob back home. And the wife is.
And there's 4 kids running around.
Oh. So the cleanliness to me, which I've learned to just put up with it or do it yourself. Right now I'm at home, but yeah, I think it's that tardiness. It's like, oh geez, yeah. And they all know. The kids know. There's a water bottle rolling around in the back of the car. It's like, pick that up before Dad loses his shit, please. Those little things like that. So, yeah.
So I've got to ask you, would you rather be stuck doing inventory with no coffee or a 3 a.m. unload in winter?
Oh, I can't do winter. I can't do winter. And I have.
You did it for a long while, though, didn't you? You did it for a long while.
Coffee, so I'm doing coffee. I'm doing inventory.
Okay, you're doing that. And the last one, what? Actually, I've got 2. There's another one I ask you. What's the weirdest thing? Because you did airline freight. What was the weirdest thing you've ever seen in freight? What was one thing you unloaded the pallet or opened a door and went, oh my God, what is that? What's the weirdest thing you've seen? Well,
not seen. What I visualize is the bond that they have at the airport. So the bond is a section, obviously, where they put drugs, anything that had to go into a bond to get investigated. This room was massive. It was palletized from left to right. It had, benches and shelves, and you just didn't realize
of just contraband and all that kind of stuff.
Contraband. Yep. And so they sort of
and it's called the bond
and wait for people to come and pick it up and then arrest them. But yeah.
The bond. I've been asked to invest in stocks and bonds. I didn't know it was that.
Well, hey,
because there's money in it,
mate. Because it's always chock-a-block. It's always choppers.
007, the bond. Last one for you. What's the part of your job that surprises most people when you're out to dinner and you tell people about your job? What part of your job surprises people the most?
I think it's just me doing safety because I'm a bit of a larrikin and I joke around and I'm the one that will pull a prank on you and, change the keys on your keyboard and stuff like that.
Oh,
And
do
then
you do the keyboard, the
I
button
love
swap?
the keyboard thing.
Oh,
I love it. Yep.
It's harder to do on modern laptops, but back in the old
Exactly.
day, the key swap was fantastic.
Yeah, or the battery out of your mouse and things like that. I'll do all day, and so when when people go, "You're safety, you're a loose cannon, mate." It's like there's a time and place for everything, and I can go to the footy and I, I I can get on the punt with the guys and I can and I think that's probably where they see me differently because I'm not one of I think historically those safety guys that are really are nerdy and don't do the things that they preach for you not to do. And I'm not saying I'm a daredevil, but if we're playing footy, we're playing footy. Like I'll do all those things that the guys do at camp, especially. If we're having a card night, I'm gonna be jumping in. So I'm just part of the group. It just means that when we put our uniform on, boys and girls, you got to do that job, and I've got to do this job. And I think that's where I'll be. Uh, I have the pleasure of gaining all these, awesome relationships out on site because I'm just one of you. At the end of the day, I've had an accident, and I'm here to prevent the next person from having something similar, a life-changing event in their lifetime. So, yeah, if I say one, that's one that doesn't have to go through the trauma that I went through. So, yeah.
Well, mate, so sorry for the trauma you had to go through and survive, but I'm so thrilled that you're able to turn that negative into a positive and actually help other people, hopefully avoid the trouble that you had to go through, mate. And you do it incredibly well, and we want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And I've got a thing now where I do an outro, but mate, what I do is I make sure that the guests stay on where I do their outro. It's like that crazy thing that people have to wait until they die to have people turn up and say nice stuff about them. So I'm going to talk about you for a little bit in your outro, but you're going to stay here with me because let me tell you, he's not reading from a book at all. He's not reading from pages out of some kind of management written book or thesis. Wex is speaking from experience. I'm Shane Jacobson with How You're Travelling. For more stories like this, check out the other episodes and keep the conversation going. If you're ever stuck, stressed, or need to reset, the Healthy Heads app is ready when you are. So look after yourself out there. And one man that makes sure that people are looking after themselves out there is my mate Wex. Wex, thank you so much for being on our podcast.
It's absolute privilege, Shane. Thank you very much for having me, mate.
I reckon I'm going to get you to say goodbye to everyone to end this ep. Away you go, Wex. Do my job for me. Go.
Thanks for joining us, guys. It's been a pleasure for me to share my story, and I hope that if you take a little snippet out of that, it's going to make you and your experiences a lot safer and better moving forward. Thank you.
Did it better than I could. Thanks, gang. Take it easy out there. We'll see you on the road or in a warehouse soon. If you're doing it tough, don't go it alone. TAX, aka This Is a Conversation Starter, offers 8 free counselling sessions for truckies, tradies and blue-collar workers. No cost, no GP referral, no fuss. Just call 0488 846 988. That number again, 0488 846 988. And if you're feeling overwhelmed and need support right away, call Lifeline on 13 11 14. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.